it's Sharon MacLean here for C-suite executives and entrepreneurs who want to grow their business using digital strategies. I'm here with my good friend, Olivier Taupin. Hi, Olivier.
Hi, Sharon. It's a pleasure to discuss with you how to become a social CEO.
We have so much information to share, Olivier, and we've all heard about the endless shiny new tools to learn, the hip language and cultural habits to conquer. Yet the online world for business really breaks down into three basic steps. Number one, it's about adopting the correct mindset. Number two, it's knowing the social habits of your staff, your customers, and your competitors. And finally, so important, it's training your staff as well as yourself in how to become a social CEO. So the question, of course, comes up, well, why? Why do we care? And the answer to that, of course, is around risk. Risk in the C-suite. Customers, employees, competitors are talking about your business all the time, whether or not you want them to. The question is, what are the priorities that you assign to taking back control of your own story? We can help you with that. In the time that it's going to take me to say this sentence, 50,000 tweets will have been sent. What we want to know is, what are they saying about you and your company, good or bad? So Olivier, why do you think a CEO should be social?
Well, Sharon, I'd like to understand why they would not being social.
Well, many of my clients say they are doing well without social media, Olivier. They have grown their client bases, their customer bases over the years, and they're doing just fine without social media.
But CEOs also were doing fine before the computers. We have evolved through many stages of communications, fax, the internet, email, and now it's social media. And I think it's the old story of evolution. Adapt or die. One of the first reasons is that your competitors are on social media. And they get market information in real time. You work hard and you don't want to lose traction. Also, your customers are on social media, of course, and they expect to meet you there because you are the face of your products and services. And last, because your employees want you to be there for leadership. They are more compelled by a CEO who delivers guidance. Don't let them find their information from competitive sources. You don't want them to quit. And look, Sharon, this is the 7 attributes of social CEOs according to Harvard Business Review. Why would not a CEO want to have those attributes?
These are some really good characteristics that I see here, Olivier, and I like all of them. I especially like the company's #1 brand ambassador being the CEO. These attributes are important in any leader, whether or not they're in social media, but so important when they do arrive on social media.
So what do you think there are actually still unsocial CEOs today?
Probably the biggest reason CEOs have for not being on CEO is they're not aware of the risk conditions or the risk metrics we like to see. And they're not coming back from either sales or marketing perhaps and operations, but they want to know what is the risk for being on social media. And perhaps they're not hearing enough evidence to tell them about that condition. And the other elements, of course, are they perhaps because they haven't got the correct metrics involved to report on, they haven't had the opportunity to identify opportunities through social media. And then combining that with the fact that some of their staff are not adequately trained in connecting the dots. Perhaps they know how to use social media using Twitter. Perhaps they've been on Facebook for a long time, but they don't have the ability to know those metrics to scale efficiently. And they also don't trust the people in the circles that they have on social media.
And you and I have heard quite a few stories. I would almost say horror stories in social media.
Oh, there
Do
are
you want
so
to
many.
share some?
Sure, there's so many, Olivier. They really come out very often when it comes around to having and hosting a special event inside a company. Maybe it's their annual general meeting, or maybe it's an important community fundraiser that that company is hosting, or maybe it's a product launch. Let's talk about product launches. And it comes down the pipe that they have got a new product to launch, and they want to do this worldwide. And they finally think about social media and say, well, we've got to get this story out inside of 2 weeks. That is something that very difficult to manage, because we want to have time on social media in order to sensitize our and build our audiences there. So that's been a challenge for sure. So when CEOs decide their company should go social, what steps do they take first?
They need a social media audit, which has three parts: the summary of the current strategy, an inventory of the social assets they have, and what's happening on social media about the industry and about their company.
If we circle back to the current strategy, Olivier, what does that mean to you?
It is a picture in one specific time about the company social media results.
So, for example, I suppose that human resources might have followers on a certain Twitter platform, and marketing might have fans on Facebook, for example, but we don't know that they're talking to each other, or they're not aware of each other.
We need to know what we have first, and that's called the social assets inventory. Basically, it's finding out what are the social accounts you have today.
The inventory will give us a bird's eye view again of the entire corporation, and where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are as well, I imagine.
Exactly.
What about social listening, Olivier? What does that mean?
Said a lot of things happen online. People say things about your company, about the industry. You need the information. If it's good, if it's bad, it's something you can use. So for a small company, you must be at least 3 times a day on social media. The people from your company need to be assigned to listen to what people say about them. And there's lots of tools to do that. And from time to time, you should have a report saying, this is where we are now. That's what people say about us, good and bad.
We see here a number of platforms, Olivier. What are these all about?
Well, that's the various social accounts. You were telling me there were 100 of them, by the way.
Well, actually, there's more than 800, Olivier, and they are growing every day.
Yes, and there's the famous Big Five: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, YouTube. But that's not all. I'm also sharing here a few resources that I'm following closely, particularly the vertical networks that are networks for specific functions or industries, but also the new video streaming networks such as Blabim. This is to record your various social networks. You wouldn't believe that, but most companies do not know which assets they have, and even less who the owner of these assets are. I don't think people realize that their employees has been aware of social networks far before them. And some of them left the company with the social networks they were owning.
This is such an important template, Olivier, because particularly the password captures connected to the platform. And so very often we walk into a company that have no idea where their passwords are.
And that's a pretty busy chart here. What do you think?
But such a useful chart, Olivier. I see you've started off with the official accounts that we want to keep apprised of.
And that's the one that the CEO is aware about. That's the official Twitter account for the company, for the major products. That's the Facebook page, the LinkedIn page. That's the web bio of the CEO. I love to add the CEO here. You have the various brands with their blog, with their social networks, with their web pages.
So the official pillar is something that we'll all go and do right away. These other three pillars are a little bit less obvious, like the unofficial pillar.
And most people, when they do their social media audit, just limit it to official, and I think it's a big mistake. Mm-hmm. The unofficial are very important, either because some of the unofficial channels are champions that are mostly not used by the company, or they are just missed opportunity. You have employees who understand the importance of social media. They've created a new Twitter account for one of your new brands, but you as a CEO is not aware of that. You have a very reactive employee that you should reward, but you should also know that the employee do not have all the information about the strategy of the company. So you need to make sure that your partners, your user groups, your alumni are using the correct logo, the correct slogans, the correct definition of the brand. For each of these various unofficial assets, you want to make sure you check for consistency and you support these people. They are your champions. And
on the reverse side, this is where you can also lose control of your own story, because the messages may go off in completely different directions that you might not support.
And you don't want your champions, when they are frustrated, to start saying bad things about you. Let's say that one of your user group start selling that this functionality do not work properly. It's better to react before they say that.
And the other opportunity here, or perhaps even a missed opportunity, is that active user group who is becoming your champion can now perhaps even elevate into becoming a potential partner for that company.
Exactly.
What about brandjacking? What's this all about?
Well, that's I would say, the darker side of the web here. It's people who use your brand for their own benefits or against you. It's also activists, people like Greenpeace, that go after the companies who do not respect the environment by using their brands against them.
It's possible to monitor the cyberbullying platforms as well as phishing.
It is part of the social listening that we will talk about later.
And of course, taking a look at our competitors is always valuable.
Yes, part of the comparative analysis. You want to compare yourself to what your competitors are doing. You know, are they better than you in terms of social media? Is that something they do that you can use? And you want to compare yourself also to the best of breed, the industry influencers. What are they doing good that you could use? How you could use these influencers to make people know about your brand.
Social media influencers are huge when it comes time to sharing your story online. And the important distinction here is between what we mean by an influencer, let's say, within your profession or your industry, is not quite the same as when we're talking about an influencer in the digital world. The influencer in the digital world can be calculated three different ways. The first would be the number of followers they have online, number one. And then number two, the number of key followers they have, or the key contacts they have in their, let's say, their Twitter feed, for example. Those are people who are important to your industry, your profession, your company. And the third thing would be a combination of the volume of contacts times the connections, let's say.
That's why you need KPIs in social media. You need to know who are your followers. For every of your social accounts, track the activity, the number of posts, the frequency. You want to calculate who are your followers, the engagement, but also what your customer say about you, and growth obviously is essential.
So that members of the C-suite can use these metrics to, again, gauge opportunities or their ROI, their return on investment. These are basic tools that we need to have information on.
Yeah, and there is no strategy possible without these KPIs, obviously what they say, but also where do you want to go from there? What are the social accounts that you want to develop and those you want to forget?
And the other component of this I like, Olivier, is the ability to measure in real time, not 3 months later, 6 months later, but today.
Yes. And we were discussing about social listening. There are tons of tools existing for that, for every type of people you want or need to listen. Your employees, your alumni, your partners, your customers, your competitors. And I think one of the most important of these tools, not used enough, is the employee advocacy software. To use the power of all your employees to go in one direction. It's of putting the content together and know who are among your employees are doing the best work for you in terms of social media.
Each of these segments has got its own definition, but Glassdoor explained that platform.
Glassdoor has become extremely powerful. If you're a company and you do not know Glassdoor, you need to go there. Your employee is speaking about you as a CEO, about your company, and they're telling publicly, anonymously, what they think about your company, in the good and the bad. And these numbers are used a lot by journalists for telling which of the companies to work for.
Will these comments contribute to a sentiment analysis?
Sentiment analysis software will listen to the word and decide if customers are positive or negative about your brand.
And of course, that means that we can select. There are any number of tools available for social media monitoring. It's which ones that you evaluate and suit your particular style, as well as reputation management software.
Yes. So Sharon, you've done a few audits, I believe. And so what do you think C-suite people learn from these social media audits?
It's so much, Olivier. It truly is a perfect place to start our benchmark measurements. After the social media audits, we often see that in some cases, really nothing has been done. Or there is piecemeal work that has been carried out on various platforms, but the inconsistency really flares once we go through the audit. There's evidence of confusion among and between the departments of an organization or a business, and or even in a small business. Let's say there is confusion between what the salespeople are delivering, and of course in what the back-end delivery people are offering. So we often see really the results of what, from a bird's eye view or from 3,000 feet, really what an organization looks in their social footprint. So the first thing is confusion, sometimes lack of action. And the next thing, of course, is in today's day and age and how we're communicating with each other, it's really so much different than the force-fed communication that we received in history, where communication was precisely articulated, where nobody could say anything in response to a media inquiry, for example, and that media inquiry had to be framed succinctly. And today, people are really expecting, they're actually demanding authenticity. They want to see that authentic CEO, their leadership being true in their answers. They don't want to have the wool pulled over their eyes, both inside the company and outside the organization. So that audit is it's a beautiful place to start. As a social CEO, what would you do right after the audit, Olivier?
Well, I believe it's time to organize our social media department, Sharon.
Perfect timing.
And this social media department, I believe, should report either directly to the CEO for a small company or for a larger company from a CSMO or Chief Social Media Officer. And this organization is not like it is right now. You have every department of divisions having their social media practices, I would say. The sales team is doing social selling, the recruiters are doing social recruiting, the marketers social media marketing, and none of that is organized. That's why I would recommend that the head of social media, the CEO or the CSMO, work with somebody in charge of the content, that's a content architect, and somebody in charge of the social campaign, that's a social architect, that they work with every division horizontally. This content architect will go and speak with every content manager in the company and regroup this content all together so it's accessible by everybody. And then the social architect will work with every social people within the organization and make sure they do not only promote their own campaigns, but everybody else. I think it's good for salespeople to say that their company is recruiting. It looks like they're doing well. And for the recruiters, explain what type of marketing is done for the company. What's the image, the culture of the company?
Do you recommend that each department who is carrying out social media activities funnel their content through the chief social media officer and his or her department?
Yes, correct. Through the content architect. There is a real problem in most companies to put together the right content for their campaigns. But you know, there's tons of content in a company, and most people do not realize that. It's just a question of regrouping it and organizing it, and that's the role of the content architect.
Not necessarily from an approval of content perspective, exactly, but just simply to monitor what's going on within the organization at all levels, I imagine.
Exactly, to organize it so other divisions, other departments can use it for their own campaigns. Now, you don't have just the content from your department or division, you have the content from the whole company. Many CEOs do not realize they have social influencers within their organization, Sharon. How can they find out and use their employees' influence?
There's tremendous resources available to determine an employee's influence, and we have such tremendous talent, I think, and activity going on in all levels of business, whether it's small business or large business. There might be an individual at the front end of the office who is really good on Twitter. Maybe another person has got a history on Facebook. And what we would like to do is be able to capture those influencers in a coordinated program of social media. But of course, we have to be aware of privacy. We can't just walk up to an individual and demand that they turn over their Twitter account to us, or ask the Facebook person or the LinkedIn individual, the person on LinkedIn, whether or not they will work with us on a social media plan. So what we want to do, of course, is discover all of that. Who's doing what on which platform, and there are a number of tools that you can see here that are available. What are the main parts then of a social media strategic plan, Olivier?
Well, it's just like a business plan when you think about it. There is external analysis, there is an internal analysis, and then you have a strategy identification and selections. But where do you find those informations? The external analysis first is based on the conclusion of your social media audit with the social listening part of that audit. The internal analysis, you could do it from the social asset inventory. You could do it also with the social employee advocacy program, finding out who are the influencers within your company. And the various content management reports that you have. Well, the internal analysis gives you strengths and weaknesses. The external analysis, your opportunities and threats. From there, you identify and select the adequate social media strategy.
3 good pillars here in order for us to go forward with a strategy, Olivier.
Sharon, how do CEOs ensure their employees participate actively in social media Well, at the same time, you mitigate the risk of social media itself.
Well, here's where the social media policy comes in handy, Olivier. And depending on the culture of an organization, those policies can either be stern or lenient.
Mm-hmm.
And we can develop those policies to give guidance both to employees as well as to the board of directors, perhaps, and of course the customers coming and going.
Mm-hmm.
And again, depending on the culture of the organization. For example, Zappos is a really good example of a social media policy that is very simple, and
Mm-hmm.
it's only 7 words long,
Mm-hmm.
which are be real and use your best judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Just 7 words for that social media policy, which is a bit brief for me. But here are some 7 examples of and guiding ideas for a company to take into consideration. We really want them to get it right from the beginning. So when an employee is onboarding to a company,
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure that they are aware of whichever direction we want to take our social media policies. Again, either lenient or easy. And then, of course, we also want to make sure that those policies are revisited, because if they are developed in an organic way as challenges present themselves, and we put a new policy in place, that changes so much, of course. So we want to keep everybody in tune with the developments in the policies.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, using common sense is such a brilliant, of all of these tools, of all of these ideas, I think using common sense prevails. How does a social CEO make sure his or her social media strategy is going according to plan, Olivier?
Like in every business plan, you want to regularly, weekly, monthly, go back to your KPIs and check your current results versus your KPIs. I personally believe in a concept for this monitoring and control will look a little complex here. It's the concept of agile monitoring and control. The concept of agile methodology comes from software development and now is used for every type of project management. I think for the monitoring in social media, it's essential. You don't want to analyze results over a long period. You want regularly on short period, look at the results and right away modify your strategy if necessary. Not wait for 6 months, but just week after week decide, are we doing what we're supposed to do according to our strategic planning?
The beauty of social media so often is we're living in real time and we see those results so quickly. For example, in Facebook advertising, you can know exactly if you're on the mark with your messaging and or your audience.
Exactly. And this agile methodology for social media monitoring and control has many benefits. Well, you find more rapidly if you have an ROI for your plan. You can take immediately the right decisions and modify your plan if you don't get the results you wanted. Basically, you reduce your risk, you learn more from your social media process, and you see if you invested enough resources for reaching your goals.
It really is so different than years ago when we had to wait months before we could see how a program was progressing.
You have so many tools today to see the increase of the number of followers, the increase of the engagement on your Twitter accounts, the growth of your LinkedIn group. It's instantaneous. You mentioned very often the importance of innovation in social media. So why must CEOs constantly innovate in this field?
We're living in an age of personal branding, Olivier. Every individual, whether they are working for a business, owning their own business, or seeking a position in another business, is in charge of their own brand, whether they're looking for a job or whether they are looking for more customers for their business. So really that company that understands that the strength that they're moving forward with is a sum of everybody working for them and with them in partnership. Oh, that's the company that's going to go forward.
It's so true in social media. I mean, the sum of the activities of social media of every employees, that's what makes the social media image of the company.
It's the collective and collaborative style in which we're working today. So here's a wind-up slide, Olivier, that talks about innovation, distinguishing the leader and the follower, and of course, Steve Jobs said that.
I love it. We just, in the last hour, just completed the 10 steps for social media leadership, Sharon.
We've got a blueprint for the social CEO, don't we?
We do. We cover social media audit. We organize a social media department. You talk about employee influence and discuss content management, social media policy, and strategic planning. I know how important for you skill and talent development is. I briefly discussed the agile monitoring and control. We mentioned the importance of innovation. Well, I believe we have our social media CEO, Sharon.
We certainly do, Olivier. And we extend an invitation to anybody listening to this program who would like to implement or the 10 steps to becoming a social enterprise by contacting either you, Olivier, or me at these email addresses.
Well, thank you, Sharon. It was a pleasure.
It was all mine, Olivier.
Bye.
Bye-bye.